hair, and so on. That question leads Anaxagoras to the explanation that in each substance there coexists from the beginning all other substances, and in thus each part is nourished by substances similar to it, which are found everywhere. Anaxagoras reaches the conclusion that the elements of matter are not only earth, air, fire, and water, but are infinite. And they are infinite not only in number, but in their divisibility. In the microcosm, there is always an element smaller than the small. And in the macrocosm of the planets and the stars, there is always a magnitude of compound matter larger than the previous large one. Both Anaxagoras and Empedocles believe that the elements of nature are eternal and immutable substances. This leads them to the conclusion that they do not have their own motion, but that the cause of motion is spirit, the mind that governs the totality of the world. Mind, as posited by Anaxagoras, is two things combined: intellectual power and soul. The soul comprises the cause of motion of all things, and it not only moves matter, but at the same time it arranges and directs it. Mind is unique, self-same, self-subsistent, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, eternal, complete. In this matter, the great Greek sage discovered the pure spiritual essence which embodies the powers of the one and only God, abstracted from the dynamic activity of the whole. The whole exists when the one contemplates itself, but with its thought externalized. The formation of the world was seen through the prism of scientific theology by the great Greek sage Democritus at the end of the 5th century BC and at the beginning of the 4th century BC. Engaged in physics, mathematics, medicine, psychology, logic, ethics, technology, and especially with the hidden powers of the Greek language, that consummate speculative thinker reached the point of believing that he felt happier with a new discovery than if he were granted the Persian throne. The source of knowledge is the perceptible world, with the mind as its base, Democritus believes, and adds, the sum of matter is constant. Matter consists of parts which are incalculably small. Genesis and corruption are both the bonds and the liberation of those parts. In the progression from Genesis to decay, and from decay to Genesis, the law that holds is like unto like. If we accept these views, we reach the conclusion that we live in an eternal world whose substance involves the totality of matter and whose essence involves spirit, towards which it tends. The universe of the ancient Greeks is theocratic. It is theocratic because it is subject to laws, because it is mathematical, geometrical, symmetrical, harmonious, chemical, complete, and above all, animate. The automatic movement of all things demonstrates its self-purpose, its internal ensoulment. At the peak of the entire creation stands man. His thought is part of the whole. His soul is part of the soul of the universe. From the separate observatories of scientific and theurgical investigations, he strives to redeem the agony of his soul. Science tries to demonstrate that matter contains law independently of divinity, and that divinity stands as an avenger, ready to cast into eternal hellfire whoever denies it. And so we have in our age two incredibly huge forces battling each other in an unending war of illusions. Religion without proof, and science without hope. The bridge that can unite these two great opposites is called scientific theology. Religion within science, science within religion.
If the scientific community accepts the idea of a universe which exists and functions by divine command, then the advance towards research and interpretation of space and time will be steadily progressive and well documented.
If the Christian Church which represents the largest religion of the Western world, accepts the idea that the quest for the ideals of Christianity and of the divine world in general are based on scientific facts, and on this basis it climbs to transcendent truths, which are idealistic, but at the same time geometrical and mathematical, with proportions and symmetries, then the bridge between science and religion will be the passage from the material world to the spiritual. I sought solitude in order to enter the world of the transcendent ideas on the unique towering rocks of sacred meteora. I let my gaze wander over the stony masses, which were crowned with Byzantine monasteries. Here the soul really can unite with nature so as to know the divine world which leads to the knowledge of God. The first thought that came to my mind was the saying of Jesus in the Gospel of John. "The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works." The Father of whom Christ speaks expresses the spiritual dimension which covers space and time, in which the universe lives and exists and moves. The Father acts, but through the Son. Through the Son, Christ, the infinite power of the Father acts. Anything can happen in this world through Jesus Christ. He, the One, performs only miracles to heal the sick and raise the dead, to convey the message of God's authority over life and death to human understanding. The progression of the God-man after his death was the union of his soul with God himself, Christ tells us.
The progression of the God-man after his death was the union of his soul with God himself. His resurrection was the very unification of his soul's light with the light of the Father, and this constitutes the spiritual mantle of the all that exists within the all itself, and at the same time outside it.
Christ confesses, "My Father is greater than I am." The Father is so great that the all is within him. The Father is not described as greatest, primordial, eternal, because every such property is within him, and language has still not approached his infinite power. The Father, being, he who was and will be, is inconceivable. Ontologically speaking, he belongs in the domain of human conceptualization only as he exists. The magnificence of the stellar heavens describes his glory, and it is impossible to describe the sum of his properties. The marvel of the quantum world, in which the soul of the world, called motion, acts for the sake of the universal machine, is but a simple thought of God and the Father. Christ is one, unique and eternal. On a television broadcast of Apocryphal Harmony, I had as my guests not only professors of theology, but also astrophysicists. The subject was the martyrdom of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, his death, resurrection, and his universal attributes. The birth of Jesus Christ, his teaching, his works, everything that has to do with his presence on the planet Earth, must be viewed within the prism of his relation to the universe itself.
The power that he takes from God and the Father and performs miracles and conquers death itself lies mainly in his human nature. All such power constitutes possibilities, inherent in every simple person, provided they comprehend the divinity from whom it derives and to whom it belongs.
Perhaps man in relation to the sun constitutes a prototype. Every scientific thought inclines towards this view. And surely the conclusion that follows is that man, as an original model of the Son of God, does not only have as his mission to strive to discover God, but especially to strive to unite with him, because man himself is a part of God's substance. This unification ranks the human being as a divine being, the result of which is that man himself can conquer even death.